Former South Korean President Lee Myung-bak is jailed for 15 years. And US Vice President Mike Pence takes aim at China, accusing Beijing of meddling in American politics.
Good evening and welcome. The Immigration Department has decided not to renew a visa for Financial Times journalist and Foreign Correspondents Club Vice President Victor Mallet. While the government isn't giving a reason for the decision, some lawmakers say it's in retaliation for an FCC talk on independence, an event which Mallet chaired. Kana Chu reports.
Last month, the government banned the Hong Kong National Party on the grounds of national security, public safety, public order, as well as the protection of freedom and rights of others. This was weeks after Andy Chan, convener of the party, gave a speech at the FCC on Hong Kong independence. Financial Times Asia News editor and first vice president of the Foreign Correspondents Club, Victor Mallet, chaired the event back in August. Now the government has refused to renew his working visa. A Penn Democrat lawmaker thinks it's retaliation for going ahead with the talk.
Now, I suspect it's a retaliation measure and sending a very wrong message to the international community. Carrie Lam's government put Hong Kong to be another city in the mainland. And that is a very worse measure and undermine the image of a free city of Hong Kong.
An FT spokesperson noted it's the first time a person from their Hong Kong office has had their visa renewal rejected without reason. A pro-establishment lawmaker believes the incident could be related to Andy Chan's speech at the FCC.
From my own personal observation, the event is highly related to the former incident that FCC has invited a person advocating pro-independence of Hong Kong. I think this incident has given a very clear message to Hong Kong public that the zero tolerance of pro-independence of Hong Kong has already been escalated to a state level.
Kana Chu, TVB News.
A temporary injunction order is now in place banning busking in public areas of Times Square. At issue is the ground floor space at the Causeway Bay Shopping Mall. Management took legal action last month to ban ANSI compensation from street performers on the grounds that the open piazza should be used for passive recreation. The temporary ban will remain until a case by one of the musicians against the mall is heard.
Overseas, South Korea's former President Lee Myung-bak was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison today. Lee's conviction came 6 months after his successor and fellow conservative Park Geun-hye was convicted in a separate corruption scandal. Tony Saban reports.
It was the end of the road today for former South Korean leader Lee Myung-bak, who was jailed for 15 years for corruption. Lee was not at court to hear the verdict today, but his sentence makes him the latest in a string of high-profile political and business leaders snared by graft charges. Lee, who served as president from 2008 to 2013, is the fourth former South Korean president to be jailed. His successor Park Geun-hye was imprisoned for her role in a separate corruption scandal that toppled her from power in early 2017 and also led to jail time for the heir to the Samsung Group. Lee faced charges that he accepted illegal funds from institutions like Samsung and his own intelligence service. The Seoul Central District Court found Lee guilty of embezzlement of about 24.6 billion won from a private auto parts maker headed by his brother and accepting bribes from Samsung and others. Lee was fined 13 billion won in addition to the jail sentence. The former president has denied any wrongdoing. He maintains the investigation that led to the trial was politically motivated revenge by current President Moon Jae-in, who came into office vowing to clean house after the Park scandal. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has unleashed a blistering attack against China for what he says was an attempt to influence November's congressional elections. He says that Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election pales in comparison to China's overt and covert activities. Alan Booknier reports.
In what was billed as a major policy speech, Pence sought to build on President Donald Trump's accusations at the United Nations last week. There, Trump accused China of trying to influence November's election so that Republicans lose control of Congress.
Our intelligence community says that China is targeting U.S. state and local governments and officials to exploit any divisions between federal and local levels on policy. It's using wedge issues like trade tariffs to advance Beijing's political influence.
Pence pointed to Chinese tariffs targeting farmers and industries that are crucial to Trump in the midterms, as well as behind-the-scenes actions like coercing U.S. businesses to speak out against the Trump administration. Pence also denounced China's actions in the South China Sea, including a recent incident between Chinese and American warships.
Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows.
Pence's speech marks a sharpening approach towards China that goes beyond the bitter trade war.
To put it bluntly, President Trump's leadership is working, and China wants a different American president.
Beijing reacted angrily to Pence's speech. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying released a statement objecting to Pence's groundless allegations, calling them slander against China. She urged the United States to stop actions that hurt Sino-U.S. ties and take concrete actions to maintain the steady development of bilateral relations. Alan Booknier, TVB News.
And still to come tonight. Policy address to earmark billions of dollars for the city's aging lifts. Protests in Washington as Brett Kavanaugh inches closer to nomination.
Welcome to our lounge. Enjoy your stay.
Thanks very much.
Find calm in over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. It's another way we've got your back. The Platinum Card from American Express. Don't live life without it.
Welcome back to TVB News. The chief executive has reportedly earmarked $2 billion for private homeowners to maintain their buildings' elevators. Details will be unveiled in a policy address on Wednesday. Sharon Tang with more.
Sources say money will be set aside for lift repairs this year. In April, a couple was seriously injured after a lift suddenly soared 30 floors and slammed into the ceiling of the shaft in Tsuen Wan. A month later in Shengshui, a faulty lift dragged up a female resident. Her dead body ended up in the shaft. Authorities attributed the cause to a broken brake system. According to the Development Bureau, around a third of the city's lifts are more than 30 years old. That's around 20,000 of them. Some residents hope the government can provide more subsidies, especially for those in old districts like Shamshui-Po. Tang Wai-Keung, chairman of a residential building committee, says these lifts have been in operation for more than 50 years. Although they have been out of working order a few times, maintenance plans have failed in the past. He stressed that's because a new lift costs some $100,000. Also, most of the residents here are elderly people with limited income, and there hasn't been much in the way of subsidies to help them. Sources say the Urban Renewal Authority will handle the upcoming proposal. Priority would go to private residential buildings, which are 20 years of age or above, as well as those with urgent maintenance needs. Lawmaker Vincent Cheng hopes the government could think further and consider passing legislation to get homeowners to change aging lifts in their buildings. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Calls for a complete ban on e-cigarettes are getting stronger. Christy Leung with details.
Buying cigarettes can be a piece of cake for young people. Although I was wearing my school uniform, the salesperson sold the products to me, saying e-cigarettes are not harmful at all, said Stephanie, a secondary 3 student. The Boys and Girls Association of Hong Kong surveyed 712 parents, children and teens from September up until early this month. 22 respondents who are under 18 have tried e-cigarettes or are regular e-cigarette smokers. That's why they want a complete ban.
They found it very fashionable and trendy. And it is a horrible trend that the young people are well accepting the e-cigarette among them as a lifestyle and trend. We found that it is very much dangerous because the ingredients inside.
The association is also gathering signatures in support of the ban. It vows to step up actions with other groups if the government doesn't announce any ban in the policy address next week. Calls for a ban also from the Hong Kong Doctors Union, Hong Kong Academy of Nursing and other medical groups. However, Hong Kong Vape Association Chairman Max Chan says retailers have agreed not to sell e-cigarettes to youngsters. He also stressed retailers do not have the authority to check customers' identity cards for their age. Instead of a complete ban, Chan thinks authorities should monitor the market through legislation. Christy Leung, CBB News.
A new bag policy has been in force at the U.S. Consulate General in Central since the beginning of last month. The rule requires visa applicants to keep their items carried in a bag that is only slightly larger than an A4 sheet of paper. It's a measure that some find inconvenient.
The goal really is not to inconvenience people. The goal actually is to help them get in and out of the consulate as quickly as possible. If someone does bring a bag and they need to go find a place to store it, they don't lose their appointment for the day.
Small electronic devices such as mobile phones are still required to be switched off and left at the consulate's checkpoint. Those who were refused entry due to their large bags used a nearby sports center to rent lockers for temporary storage.
Overseas again, it has been a week since a destructive earthquake and tsunami killed more than 1,500 people on Indonesia's Sulawesi Island, while hundreds more remain missing. International rescuers were unable to find possible signs of life they detected underneath the rubble of a hotel yesterday. Last night, the 5-member International Emergency Firefighters team said its sensor detected the presence of a victim. The signal came from under thick concrete in the wreckage of the Mercure Hotel in Palu City. Thousands of people have been injured in the disaster and more than 70,000 have been evacuated to shelters and makeshift tents across Palu.
Celebrities were among the hundreds of people arrested in Washington, D.C. on Thursday as thousands took to the streets to protest against embattled Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. He faces sexual misconduct allegations from several women. This as lawmakers take a crucial vote later today on whether to advance his nomination. Jeff Tang reports.
These were scenes described by foreign media as unprecedented for any U.S. Supreme Court nominee in recent history. Thousands of protesters, including many sexual assault survivors, demonstrated outside the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., where Brett Kavanaugh sits as a federal judge. The group then marched in unison to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's where Kavanaugh hopes to secure a lifetime appointment, pending a crucial Senate ballot later today on whether or not to advance his nomination. The protest is a final, desperate appeal to senators to vote no. Among them were actresses Amy Schumer and Emily Ratajkowski, who recently starred together in a movie about female empowerment.
A vote for Kavanaugh is a vote saying women don't matter. Yes. Let's stay together. Let's fight. Let's keep showing up.
Schumer and Ratajkowski then joined more than 300 protesters on the floor of a Senate office building's atrium, where they ended up being arrested by police. Kavanaugh's confirmation now hinges on the FBI report that US President Donald Trump ordered last week. Democrats have slammed the probe as too narrow in scope and left out critical witnesses. But it was apparently good enough for key Republican Senators Jeff Flake and Susan Collins, who spent hours poring over the confidential documents late Thursday. The pair's support is vital as Republicans hold a slim 51-49 advantage in the Senate. If Kavanaugh's nomination is confirmed today, a final vote will take place tomorrow. Meanwhile, Kavanaugh acknowledged that he went overboard when forcefully denying the allegations at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing last week. His emotional testimony led many to question whether he has the temperament to be a Supreme Court judge. The 53-year-old published an op-ed admitting that he said a few things he should not have said, while promising that he remains the same hard-working and even-keeled person he has always been. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
The 2018 Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to Congolese Dr. Denis Mukwege and Yazidi human rights activist Nadia Murad. The pair were recognized for their efforts to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon in war. Mukwege, a gynecologist, has devoted his life to helping victims of wartime sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He is considered one of the world's leading experts on repairing rape injuries. Meanwhile, Iraqi-born Murad is one of thousands of Yazidi girls and women who were victims of Islamic State. She escaped 3 months after being captured in August 2014 and speaks about the abuses perpetrated against herself and others. At 25, she is the second youngest Nobel Peace Laureate after Malala Yousafzai, who was 17 when she won 4 years ago. And that's the news.
Thanks.